And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series, and today is the 14th and last of my 14 video series, walking through the correct reading order of Superman by DC. To create this guide, I've read and now discussed 1,677 individual comic issues comprising the entirety of Superman's reading from 1991 and the launch of Man of Steel with issue 1, all the way up until 2011 and the start of Flashpoint, and that's where we're going to be leaving it off at the end of this video. This guide takes the form of a Google Sheet split into 14 tabs, and those 14 tabs represent 14 discrete eras. Today I'm going to be discussing the 14th and last era. This guide can be viewed and downloaded for free on my website. If you're only interested in the DC events that intersperse these videos, they're also clipped in a dedicated 11 video playlist available separate in the channel, but I've also interspersed them in chronological order with these Superman videos, meaning that this playlist is probably going to be something like 25 videos long or something like that. I would recommend watching the introductory video for the series because it will explain some key points like why am I starting off in 1991 rather than any earlier, and what I mean when I talk about things like Type P and Type J readers, and even things like triangle numbering and terms like that I may be throwing in there. Well, with no further ado, here is the 14th and final era of my Superman reading. So last time we covered the Blackest Night DC event in a dedicated video, and before that, in terms of Superman reading, we covered the 13th era of Superman comics, which was from November 2008 to August 2010. In other words, it was the New Krypton arc that led up to the Blackest Night events, and in fact overlapped with it very slightly. Now, the thing about the New Krypton arc is that it had reintroduced the triangle numbering that we'd seen in the early 5 or 6 eras of Superman, where because the different series kind of interwove very, very tightly and the plot lines were incomprehensible if you read an individual series or printing, then triangle numbers help you navigate from one series to the next. So you read Action Comics and then Superman and then Supergirl and so on and so forth. Well, with the end of New Krypton, we see the end of the triangle numbering and we go back into normal or relatively conventional numbering for the various series. In other words, we have decoupled the narrative between Superman and Action Comics, for example. As always with these reading guides, please go through them one line at a time. So for example, you read issue 701, then 702, and so on. Always just go down one line at a time. We never have more than one issue on a line, so that keeps it nice and straightforward. This video should be relatively simple and short because it only covers 37 issues from September 2010 to October 2011. So in other words, from Blackest Night up to the Flashpoint event and the launch of the New 52. But that said, although it looks very simple here, when we scroll down in a minute, we're going to see that it actually has some of the most complicated mapping of any of the Superman eras we've talked about. And in fact, in many ways, it is impossible to read this era of comics in a coherent way. But before we get into that, let's just look straight at Arc 1 of the 14th and final era. This is an arc I call Grounded, and that's the official name for it. It's the Grounded Superman arc. And with issue 701, we see the arrival of J. Michael Straczynski as a Superman writer. Now, I'm a huge fan of JMS. One day I'll probably do a reading guide for his Supreme Power universe. I've always been a big fan of essentially anything he's ever written or done. His TV show Babylon 5 was incredible. His writing is great. Um, Unfortunately, this Superman arc as a whole is quite unsatisfying. But in his defense, from what I gather, is he had a very particular direction he wanted to go with this. And then the New 52 was kind of dropped on him out of the blue, and he had to very rapidly wrap it up in a way that he wasn't planning initially. So just putting that out there. So we start off with issue 701. As always, we have note text here on every single issue where it's relevant. So this one says Straczynski runs start. Then we have issue 702 and 703. Issue 704 isn't technically part of the Grounded run. It's actually kind of an interlude issue written by G. Willow Wilson. I'm not a fan of G. Willow Wilson's writing for a lot of reasons. So it's up to you whether or not you want to read this or have this within this reading. It's essentially like an unrelated interlude issue. If they have collected editions, which I'm sure they do, and I'm sure is in the name and condition link that I'll have in the description, then it would make no difference if they collected this issue or not. Superman 705 is again written by Straczynski, but is quite disappointing in a way. It looks at the idea of domestic violence and sort of Superman's ability or inability to tackle it. But it's pretty disappointing given that Crisis at Hand, which I think we saw back in the first or second era, was such a good arc. The fact that this one's so, well, so anodyne and sanitized that it's just a bit disappointing, really. Issue 706 was again written by G. Willow Wilson, and again is an interlude issue that you can basically ignore. Then you have issue 707, you have issue 708. Issue 708 features Wonder Woman, although I didn't really quite get what was going on here because the way it was written, it seemed as if Superman didn't know who Wonder Woman was. Answers on a postcard if anyone can explain exactly what was going on in this issue to me. Then we have issue 709, again part of the grounded arc. Issue 710 of Superman has a flashback within the issue, and that flashback is a follow-up to the flashback scenes in a one-shot from 1999 called Superman the Odyssey. I don't know if anyone here has read Superman the Odyssey. You don't have to read that to understand this, but if you do want that extra context, you do need to read Superman the Odyssey. Like I say, it's a one-shot from 1999 because that contains various flashbacks, and then this here, issue 710, has various flashbacks that are set about a year after the flashbacks in Superman Odyssey. If that seems complicated, don't worry about it. Like I say, it's optional reading. Then we have issue 711, 712. 712 is an issue that's kind of a one-off standalone. It's written by Kurt Busiek, and this is a crypto issue. In fact, this is a crypto issue that was meant to have been published years ago. We talked about this a couple of videos ago. This was meant to be published just after Infinite Crisis in Superman 659, but basically just got put on pause and put to one side until eventually it was published here. Then we have Superman 713, and then we have Superman 714, which is the end of the grounded arc and is the last issue of the Superman series before the new 52. Moving on, let's go down to the Black Ring and also the Reign of Doomsday, and this here is where we can see things are a little bit complicated. So let's start off, let me just try and get it all in shot. Here we are. Let's start off with the Black Ring. So this will have the first issue with branding on it saying Blackest Night Aftermath. You don't have to read the Blackest Night to make sense of this, but I would strongly recommend it. That's why I did the Blackest Night as an event video yesterday, in yesterday's video covering that event in totality. So the Black Ring is an event starting at Action Comics 890, continues in 891, and then in 892. In 892, there is actually a backup story in it. Again, you'll note it's in the note text per cell. But in this backup story is really just more of a prelude to Superboy issue 1. Action Comics 893 has a backup story which is called Jimmy Olsen's Big Week Part 1. And actually we'll see that Jimmy Olsen's Big Week backup repeat in 894 and 895 and 896. Note that if you buy the Jimmy Olsen 2011 one-shot, which has got quite a distinctive cover and is quite notable, this one-shot not only has the Jimmy Olsen story, but also collects Jimmy Olsen's Big Week parts 1 to 4, which are the backup stories in these 4 issues. It collects all that in this one-shot issue. Anyway, back to the map. I did forget to mention, in issue 894, we actually see Death from the Sandman universe makes an appearance. If you're not familiar with Death, she's very cool. Interestingly, and I know this looks very strange, but interestingly, Action Comics issue 896 continues on in an issue of Secret 6. In fact, Secret 6 number 29. It's really important that you read that. This can't be skipped. It's really, really key. Unrelated to that, after Secret 629, I would recommend reading Action Comics Annual 13. It's far from essential reading, but of course, this is a complete reading guide of every in-continuity issue, so it has to go somewhere. And both the trade collection for the Black Ring and the narrative, like things they mention and so on, place it here, after Secret 629 and before Action Comics 897. Speaking of which, we then have Action Comics 897, Action Comics 898, and Action Comics 899, which ends saying to be continued and finale in Action Comics 900, which we can see here. Obviously, you've got some note text there. Again, if you download this guide, you'll be able to peruse this at your leisure. So the problem that we have is that Action Comics 900 is also a key, and in fact, in this instance, as we can see, is sort of the sixth installment of a separate story arc, which is the Reign of Doomsday story arc, which has its own branding and so on and so forth. So let's pause on Action Comics for a second. Let's look at Reign of Doomsday. Reign of Doomsday is in theory, kind of line-wide event. It starts off with Steel #1. This is a one-shot from 2011. It's not an ongoing series. It's just a one-shot issue, Steel #1. It continues in Outsiders #37. Then Justice League of America #55. Superman Batman Annual 5. Superboy 6. And then Action Comics 900. Now, what that means is that we're in quite a tricky position because we're reading, like, imagine it. You're sitting on your couch, you're reading issues, you've got a stack of Action Comics, you read Action Comics 890 all the way down to 899, but if you read 900, you're going to be confused because it's an integral intermediate issue for Reign of Doomsday. What's the alternative? The alternative is you're sitting on your couch and you read Steel #1, Outsiders 37, Justice League of America 55, Superman Batman Annual 5, and Superboy 6. Well, if you read Action Comics 900, then you're going to be confused because you haven't read Action Comics 890 to 899. There is no perfect way to read this. As I often say when I talk about Type P readers often try to solve a puzzle that isn't a puzzle. It's just the messy reality of real life. There is no perfect way to read this. Even when it was being released and being published, there was no perfect way to be picking it up. What I would recommend is read all the Action Comics issues up until 899. Pause, turn around, pick up a different reading pile, and then read the Reign of Doomsday issues until you've read Superboy 6, and then read Action Comics 900, which will provide a climax to the Black Ring, and also continue the Reign of Doomsday story. I know that's unsatisfying. I'm sure that someone in the comments is going to say, well, actually, you should read the first 3 pages of Action Comics 900 and then this issue of Outsiders and then more of 900 and then some of Justice League of America 55. And someone's going to think they've solved it. And if that's what you think, great, good for you. And if you want to pop that in the comments, fine, that's great. And I'll pin it so other people can see that. But the truth is there isn't a solution because this isn't a puzzle. This is just reality and it's messy. And it does annoy me, I'll be honest, because I do like a nice, clear, crisp reading order, and this is definitely not that. It's far too subjective and it's a bit annoying. As you can see, it's been difficult to map out in a coherent way as well. Anyway, issue 900 is a big issue. It's oversized. It has several backup stories, including a backup story called The Incident, which made news headlines at the time in the real world. It's a really good story. And we then have Action Comics 901 to 904. This includes the sub-branding Reign of the Doomsdays within the Reign of Doomsday branding, which is far from straightforward. Anyway, then we have Action Comics 904, which is the last issue of the series before Flashpoint. Woo. Right, there we are. Done. Stick a fork in it. Well, there we are, ladies, gentlemen, and others. That is the end of this video guide series. If you are one of the very, very few humans that has hung out with me till the end, thank you. That's 1,677 comic issues covered from start to finish. I hugely appreciate your support. I hugely appreciate you watching. Um, if you are interested in seeing what happens with Superman after this, I would recommend checking out my New 52 guide, which is a 31 video guide on the channel. There will be some news on that New 52 guide in the future. I'm actually rebuilding the map using the interactive zooming software that I've been using for the DC event maps here, making it available in a high resolution, infinitely scalable sort of way. So I'll be launching that hopefully in a couple of months' time. The other reading maps I'm working on is, of course, I am working on my DC Rebirth reading map, again, using the newer, better software that I'm paying for. And yeah, I'll just make this available. I'm really keen to get people's thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in a written guide, I'll talk about that in a second in the little outroduction. And of course, I've no doubt people are going to be asking for a Batman guide like this. And again, if you want to know what's happening with that, please do check the outro. As always, much love to everyone and stay classy. And there we have it. In case you're interested in knowing where these resources are, so the guides, the maps, and so on, they're all available on my website. They're all available for free. You can go into the website, which is nogodsorkings.com, and download the Google Sheet for the Superman reading order, or you can go on the website and look at these reading maps for all the various DC events and a whole bunch of other things I've got on there to your heart's desire. If, however, you are interested in a written version of this guide, then it is available on Amazon. I've recently just self-published it. It is the cheapest possible tier you can get on Amazon. So it's 79 pence UK, 99 cents American, and so on. It's free if you're on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a free sample on the website as well. The reason I put this onto Amazon is kind of a proof of concept. I'm interested to see if people are interested in the written guides, whether or not people want to pick them up. And also, it's a good way for me to bat off all the people that are going to be in the comments asking for a Batman guide. If you want a Batman guide, I don't really particularly have any interest in doing one, but I will do one if this book gets 500 reviews. So if this book gets 500 5-star reviews, then I will start doing a Batman reading guide at some point. I don't think that's going to happen, but there we are. Of course, feel free to support the channel by picking this up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, the best way to support the channel is by picking up one of my other books, which isn't a non-fiction reading guide. It's actually a fictional, completely original superhero story. It's prose, so not a comic or words, but it's about superheroes in just a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic dystopic idea. The first 4 books of the series are out, and if you want to support, please pick that up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay classy.